Hey there folks, today I'd like to take a casual peek into the Marvel Legends Iron Man Mark 42 action figure set from Hasbro. This set is part of a special series of Marvel Legends, one that focuses on Iron Man both in the comics and in the live action movies. And this set is also part of a later half of releases from this series, and was first available in 2013, right around the time of the release of the live-action Iron Man 3 movie. I got this set in 2013, and I got this particular set at Target and paid about $16 for the set. Taking a look at the figure and the packaging here, you can see the Mark 42 version of Iron Man, the movie version from the Iron Man 3 movie, and it is encased in the typical Marvel Legends style packaging, at least the Hasbro Marvel Legends packaging, but themed for Iron Man. You can see Iron Man at the top of the card with the logo there, and also the Avengers Initiative logo at the top corner. And the backing card has got a nice mix of comic style and movie style. On the left you could see the typical comic, older comic print style of the pips, and on the right you can see the Avengers logo on the backing card. Also here you can see the Build-A-Figure part for Ironmonger, which is a Build-A-Figure for this particular series, the comic Ironmonger. Taking a look here, we have the back of the packaging with a nice picture of the figure. And on the right we have an artist rendition of the Mark 42, and with a brief description there at the top. And below we have the other figures in this Ironmonger series of Marvel Legends. And we have the first three here that were released earlier. We have Iron Patriot, Classic Iron Man, and Heroic Age Iron Man. And the last two and the Mark 42 were released a little bit later, right around the time of the movie. And we have Ultron and Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes. On the left we have a picture of the comic version of Ironmonger, the Build-A-Figure put together, and the numbers corresponding to the parts that were released with each of the sets. Now we'll be right back and have the Iron Man Mark 42 out of the packaging. Okay, we have the Iron Man Mark 42 out of the packaging, and before we get into the figure, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the items that were included with the figure. And first up we have here a nice pamphlet sheet. It's basically both a checklist for the Build-A-Figure as well as some information about the Mark 42. You can see here, let me just turn this down a bit. And you can see here that you have a parts list and a checklist for the comic version of Ironmonger, which is the Build-A-Figure for this series. You can see where all the parts connect together, as well as the sets that the parts are included in. And you already have the Mark 42 check mark there, or X'd in there. And to the right you have inside the armor vault basically information about the particular figure set. And this one being the Iron Man Mark 42, which is number 4 of 6 in the series. And you have some notable tech info about Mark 42, and then you have a description down here in more detail, which is pretty cool. And nothing on that side there. Next thing we'll take a look at is the really the Build-A-Figure part that's included with the Mark 42 Iron Man, and that's the right arm of the comic version of Ironmonger. And it's pretty cool, lots of detailing here. and you could see some cable and hoses that go from look like the bicep area to a piece of technology that's wrapping around the forearm here. Pretty cool. Maybe a power supply for the arm, maybe for lifting or punching action. So pretty cool. And this piece is made of plastic, but looks very cool because the way they molded these pieces here. It's not painted on here, but it's got like a glittery effect to the piece, and I think it's because it's underneath a layer of plastic, of transparent plastic, which is pretty cool. And so it's not actually on the outside of the piece here, the glitter and paint. It's underneath a layer of plastic, which is really cool. And you can just see some more detailing with the hands here and the sculpt. It's very cool. And also on the arm. And you have this piece where the hose connects to, which is actually, does it wrap around on here? Oh no, it's actually molded onto the arm. I thought it was a separate piece around the forearm here, much like the 4-inch scale version of the Ironmonger, where that's a separate piece, but this one is actually molded on there. But pretty excited to put this together once I have all the parts in proximity to put this together. So pretty cool. This is the right arm of Ironmonger, included with the Iron Man Mark 42. Next thing we'll take a look at is the figure itself, and I have some mixed feelings about the design of the actual figure. It looks very nice from a minimal distance of, I would say, a feet or two. But once you look at it a lot closer, there are some flaws, mainly in the paint. But overall, it's a pretty good figure. And taking a look at it in more detail, you can see it does represent the movie version of this armor in the movie fairly well. You can see it's a predominantly gold schemed in color, whereas in the comics and the traditional, I should say, armor is primarily red and gold, but here it's more of a reverse of gold and red. And very interesting take. And there's lots of detail to this figure, sculpting detail, which is very cool. Now this figure is molded in red plastic, very much like the Build-A-Figure part, where there's a lot of paint on the red portions that's underneath the plastic. It seems like there's a layer of plastic over the paint, or it's just molded in this red semi-translucent with a glitter on there. You can see it especially in the back areas here, but it's basically throughout the figure where there's red. So this figure is molded in that red plastic with the glitter underneath the layer, so which is fairly cool. And then you have painted portions on this figure where you have gold and some almost like gunmetal gray that's painted over the figure. And I think that's where this suffers a little bit, is in the paint application on here, because there's so many creases and individual areas in the sculpt where just the application of paint tends to be spotty, because there's just so much detail on the figure. To be perfectly applied, I think would be pretty difficult to do. So if you really look at the figure up close, you'll see areas where the gold paint on here just misses the it bleeds over into where it shouldn't go, especially like on the forearms here, and along the legs where it tends to bleed a little bit right here on where it's supposed to come to an edge, but it goes over a little bit on there on the knee. It's just because of all of that detail that's on this sculpt, really would be hard to be perfectly align the paint on there. And you can see some misses over here on the hand covering there. But overall, I would say generally it does a pretty good job, but if you really look at it up close, you'll see areas where the paint is missed. But still, I would say in general, it's a pretty good application. But taking a look at the sculpt of the figure, it's very nicely done. You can see with the head sculpt, you've got the typical Iron Man type of head design with here the gold areas at the top. But you can see some added detail in the sculpt, like paneled type lining. That's much more evident on this version of the Iron Man armor. And over here you can see the red plastic with the glitter on there. And the eyes are done nicely on here, and also the mouth lining as well. Moving down to the torso, you can see how much intricate line work that's on the armor here, and where it'd be prone to miss paints, little types of bleed, but still pretty good overall. Nice application on the arc reactor. Looks like I got a little bit of a scratch on the paint there, on the gold paint there, and you can see the details on the paint on the arms, very nice, and the shoulder pads here as well. And the shoulder pads, unlike the earlier versions of the movie Iron Man, they're not removable, and they're actually made of a softer plastic. So what looks like a hinge is actually just glued into there, I think. So you don't have that capability of losing these shoulder armor pieces like in the older Iron Man figures. But looking at some more detail here, especially at the torso, mid-torso area, you could see all that sculpting detail. It's very nice. And also the application of paint on the gray portions of the figure. It's actually pretty cool. It's over here on the rib cage area and also up in the neck area. So on that gray application. So that's pretty cool on there. There's more sculpting detail in the back. And you also have the detail on the legs where it continues. Fairly nice on here. And down to the legs, you can see more of that line work. So very nice sculpting detail. Just hampered a little bit by the paint application. Going over articulation for this Mark 42 Iron Man. The head is on a combination of a ball and hinged joint that allows the head to go all the way around, as well as looking upwards nicely and downwards, and a slight tilt to the side there. And the arms at the shoulders are on a balled hinged joint and swivel combination. And allows the arm to go around, but not completely around due to the shoulder armor. But if you bend it, I'm sure you can get it all the way around. I don't want to bend it too much because it'll probably bend it out of place there. And the arm does go up, probably all the way up, but because again of the armor, I'm only going to go that far out and in. And you can see how the shoulder here tends to stick into place, but you can push it down to put it back into place. The arms also go around at the top of the bicep area. There are double joints at the elbows, double hinge joints. So a nice range of motion there. And the hands are on a swivel hinge joint, so you can twist the hand all the way around and in and out. And this hand armor here on the top of the hand, it does go over the wrist area, but because it's made of a softer plastic, you can bend the hand backwards, and that'll just bend the plastic a little bit there. So you can bend it upwards, especially for this hand here for repulsor firing poses. So that's kind of cool, and you can see how it bends back into shape due to the soft plastic there. So that's kind of neat. There is torso articulation, which is on I believe a balled swivel joint. So you can bend the torso downwards, up, and back, as well as go all the way around and tilt side to side, so you can get basically circular type motion around the torso there. No waist articulation. The legs are joined at the hip with a ball socketed joint, and you can see the socket going into there underneath. And this allows the leg to go upwards about that much, down, and a little bit to the back. Because of the sculpt around the top of the hip area, it does limit that forward and back movement, which is unfortunate. If they had sculpted this hip area on the torso a little bit higher, shave that a little bit, it will provide a higher amount of articulation at the hip. Unfortunately, that's as far as it'll go. And the leg can go all the way around at the hip as well. There are double joints at the knees, so you can bend the leg this far back and this far forward. And the feet have a hinged swivel joint, allows the foot to only bend up about that much, not that far forward, due to the sculpt here. If they have shaved that a little bit at the top, that'll allow more upward movement, but that's as far as it'll go. Nice downward movement though, and there is a swivel that allows sort of an ankle pivot on here, so that's kind of nice. So overall, it's a nicely sculpted figure with nice decent articulation that's just hampered a little bit due to paint quality issues, just because of all that detail for a mass-produced product. You can just really see little bits of QC on the paint. But overall, it's still a decent figure for a mass retail product, and really nice visually for the movie armor. This is my casual peek into the Marvel Legends Iron Man Mark 42 action figure set. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.